Hi, welcome to the See You at the Finish Line podcast, the podcast where former athletes and current sports fans can hear insight into the mental side of sports and learn how they can apply those insights into more success in their everyday lives. I'm your host, Reggie Butler. I'm glad to have you here. We're going to have some fun. This is going to be it's the very first episode, and it's going to be an episode where we're breaking down current sports events, taking the mental side of those and figuring out how we can apply those to our success. So I'm thrilled as we're at a time of the year where a lot of fans are watching we're watching the NBA finals, and those were wrapping up, and we're all on our social media platforms, giving our opinion, giving our picks, who's going to win this, who's going to win that. And so it's just been fun to see everybody share their thoughts. Some people give detail into why they think a certain team will win. Some people don't. Some people just like the team they like. Some people have concrete evidence that they feel is going to be the reasons why a certain team wins. So in all, man, I love seeing how people feel about sports, because at the end of the day, if we really thought deeper into what we expect from these athletes, and if we really thought deeper into how we judge their ability in accordance to what we think they should be doing, we could take those principles and apply them to our own lives and get our own type of success. Oh yeah, it might not lead to an NBA contract, us putting that to our own life, but it might lead to a promotion. If you're an entrepreneur, it might lead to more customers, more success. So it's really, really not that much of a difference between the sports world and the real world. It's just fortunately in the sports world, there's no real world consequences attached to it. It's just you win or you lose a game. And, those games have a lot of significance to a lot of people. But at the end of the day, you live. In the real world, it's a lot more at stake. Our professional lives being in shambles or being super positive can really spill over into our personal lives with our families, with our families and friends. So it's considering sports is something that so many people love. I'm glad you're here. And again, you don't have to be a former athlete or an exact sports lover, but there's an athlete in all of us. Even if you're someone who in middle school, you used to double dutch, you're a lady who used to, a woman who used to double dutch when she was younger growing up, that's a sport. So you didn't have to be on a team or go to college on a scholarship to have participated in sports. If you were someone who in gym class, you played kickball, like you participated in sports, you understood the concepts of I have my team and my team is trying to beat their team, amongst my team, here I am, my role is this. And it's the same thing that translates over to our everyday work lives or entrepreneurial lives. So look forward to having some fun breaking down the recent NBA finals with you all and how we can use some of the experiences to improve ourselves. So the first thing, and I'm someone, again, I'm Reggie Butler. I'm someone who I work with a lot of teams. I consult a lot of teams from the high school up to the professional level. And one thing that we've been focusing on for this series is the contrast in a certain word. And I say the contrast in a certain word is you have Golden State and Boston. You have two teams who are very, very, very talented, but they're also very different on a certain aspect of the spectrum, and that's experience. Anyone, I don't want to get into the percentages, but a large amount of people who felt that Boston was going to be the winner of the series, I can pretty much guarantee you that one of the factors, Golden State. Yeah, so one of the factors that they picked Golden State to win would be that they felt Golden State had the experience in their favor. And what we're going to talk about today is, what does experience really mean? Experience is a word that it either helps us and helps push us through things, push us forward ahead of people, or lack of experience can sometimes hold us back psychologically, and with people literally holding you back because they feel that you don't have experience. So Boston, on the other hand, I think that we can agree that they're a team without a lot of experience, even though they have older players, Al Horford and some other veterans, guys who've been in the league for over 5 years. You have to think like, no, not many. I don't think anyone on that team has ever played in an NBA Finals. So one reason, so while they were super talented, had youth athleticism, I never saw anybody who picked Boston saying because they had experience or because they were experienced. And so now that the series has started playing out, what I want us to talk about is, what do we see? What does experience look like? So, and if you think about it, imagine you're someone who's in the everyday world and career world, whether it's you have a job or you're an entrepreneur. How many times has the word experience been brought up to you? How many times when you were applying to a job did you literally see you need minimum of 3 years experience? How many times, if you're an entrepreneur and you were hiring somebody or you were contracting somebody, did you want to know, hey, what's your experience? What have you done? So, I mean, this is so translatable. So I want us to be able to go deeper and break down and kind of see how Golden State's experience actually shows up on the court, and how Boston's lack of experience, do we see it show up on the court, or is their talent so great that they can overcome the fact that they've never been there, that they might not have quote unquote experience? I'd love for us to go further into this. So one of the first things I think we should know, the first way we'll start this is from Boston's side. What does experience look like? In a lot of my team sessions and meetings with players and coaches, it's pretty consistent. Everyone has a thought that experience translates or looks like calmness, being steady, not being frazzled, looking like you've been there before. So all of those things. So consistently, I've gotten the feedback that there's a look. So hear this word. So think about what I'm saying. You have this word experience. And while people act like it's a thing, it's almost to others a look. You don't see falling apart. You don't see being rattled. So now that we kind of understand that it's a look, what does Golden State get out of being experienced? Throughout the series, I want you to kind of think about, are they flying off the handle or not? Are they certain situations? Are they if Boston goes on a run, do they start arguing and pointing the finger at each other? We have to define what falling apart is. But whatever you think falling apart is, do you see that from Golden State when things go bad? That's something to look at. A polarizing figure of this series on Golden State side are, of course, you have Steph Curry, but Draymond Green. And depending on how you view Draymond Green, it really kind of helps put perspective into how you view whether he's falling apart or not. He's an emotional, he's a very emotional player. He's a Hall of Famer, first of all. Hall of Famer. He's won a ton, maybe one of the most accomplished players we've ever seen out of the state of Michigan. I saw a recent Facebook post from another sports guy, Champ, and he posed a question and asked, is Draymond Green one of the most um, winningest players or accomplished players? And I would have to say yes. So now that we know his resume, we also see the emotion. We see the sharing of his opinion. We see him not holding back his words. We see so much. We know exactly how Draymond feels about so many issues. Now, because we know exactly how he feels about so many issues, and he is outspoken, and the way he presents it, whatever he has to say is so, boisterous. It's so, you could call it confrontational. He doesn't stand over there and talk. He comes right to you and he talks to you. So depending on who you are, you might see that as falling apart, but in reality, is he doing, based off his experience, is he doing what his team needs him to do? Does it help his team? Does it hurt his team? In the middle of the series, not in the middle of the series, kind of towards the end of the beginning of the series, you saw a lot of criticism of him after he had 2 points. So, oh, he's doing a podcast. Oh, he's complaining too much. What I want you to ask yourself is, of course, he didn't, quote unquote, shut up after that. But did he tone it down a little bit and start to focus the play a little bit more? Did he make his own adjustments to that? Because I know the next game, after the 2 points, I think that was when Steve Kerr maybe went in a different direction for parts of the game. And, Draymond came out after and said, I always want to play. I always want to be a competitor. But he, maybe he did the right thing. We won, we won. So did he make his own adjustments in his head based off experience? Because if we think back to 2016, look at what him not being able to filter his emotion or use his emotion in the right 100% way of helping his team actually hurt his team during the middle of that series. So, I really like to study Draymond because he brings so much to the table. He's so much to look at because you'll know how he feels and you get to see his actions. So look and see if you feel his experience of having been there before helped turn this series around for him. Because a lot of people I know who would have been criticized as much as him for having that 2 points, they can't come back and, still be productive like that. So, that's something to look at. Also, the other guys, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, they've had awesome moments. Then Steph Curry, he had a 16-point game, but fortunately they won. What does his experience bring to the table? Because he's been here before, what did he know that Boston didn't know? So let alone Steph Curry's already a good player. So even if both of them had never been to this point, I mean, Steph Curry was going to hit some threes. Steph Curry was going to make layups. Steph Curry was going to be phenomenal. But again, what did he know that Boston didn't know? What did you see experience-wise from him that Boston didn't have? So not skill, but experience. When you can figure that out, imagine if you have been at your job. Imagine if you've been in your business X amount of years and have X amount of experience, and now some up and coming company or coworker or, competitor comes in to compete with you and they're talented. They have kind of the same product you have. They have, maybe it looks like the same skill level you have. How does your experience put you ahead of them? It's the same thing. I know one is basketball and on the court, but it's the same idea. Here Steph Curry is. People have seen him. They know what he does well. They know he shoots threes. Well, why can't they stop it? How does his experience allow him to still do what he wants to do on people who know what he's going to do? And it's a hard thing, but because he's figured it out, I meant the world is his. The basketball world is his. It's his world. We're just squirrels. Right now we're just squirrels trying to get another Steph Curry's world right now. So translate that back over. How does your experience look to others? First of all, how does it look to others? Does it look like you're more calm? Because that's why I said Draymond first, because you just might not be a chill person and still have experience. So experience doesn't just mean you're always quiet and you never have a reaction. No, experience looks different things. That's why I named two different people, Draymond, his version of experience, and Steph Curry's version of experience. So what does experience look like for you in your job, in your life? If you go in for an interview now or tomorrow, excuse me, and the requirements for that job were you need 5 years of experience, and you have 5 years of experience, what are you going to be able to tell that person who's hiring you that your experience means? Now, one thing that fortunately helps, since they put it out there that you need 5 years, it puts you in a certain light of a good perspective, because you walk in with what they asked for, 5 years. Now, once you become a master, kind of, when I say a master, I mean kind of mastering life, mastering your environment. I call it reading the room, knowing what's needed. Besides just walking in with what they asked for, that 5 years, you can paint a picture of what your 5 years looks like. Imagine if you could do that. Imagine if somebody, let's flip the roles. Imagine if you're that hirer, and 5, obviously experience is important to you, or else you wouldn't have put 5 years experience needed. So someone walks in and they can tell you what their 5 years looks like. Like, how good does that look to you? Yeah, they probably put themselves ahead of people who can't tell you what their 5 years look like. Because there's a lot of people who've done a job for 5 years, but if they can't even tell you what they've done, you can't tell, you can't see that they've been doing it for 5 years. So that's all examples of kind of Golden State's perspective is, let's think deeper and take some time to yourself, think deeper into what you saw from Golden State that looked like experience, and in your own life, whatever you've really done, how can people see that? What does your version of experience look like? Now let's flip the coin. Let's talk about Boston, who super talented, very talented. Young guns per se, athletic, skilled, energy, great coaching. Golden State has great coaching as well, but Boston, great coaching. Everything needed, size, except for experience. Now, Al Horford has a lot of years of experience, but we're talking about experience in the finals. This was his first trip. So now, and we're talking kind of perspective here. So now you have the young kid on the block who doesn't have experience but has all this talent. What ways did you see that their lack of experience hurt them? Or, let's look at this from a couple ways. How did their talent outweigh the fact that they hadn't been there? So, what kind of things did you see from Boston that you were like, man, it don't matter that haven't been here before. Look at what they're doing. What did that look like? Did that look like Jason Tatum dropping threes? Was that Jaylen Brown doing something? Was that Al Horford, that first game hitting, I think, over 5 threes? What did that look like? Because that first game, you couldn't tell Boston had never been there. So what did that look like? Now, if you're somebody who's listening to this and you don't have much experience in a given field, but you're trying to, get hired, you're trying to start a business. It's funny, a lot of things I hear, especially like with young coaches or younger folks who are trying to get to a position, it just doesn't make sense to them, because they'll hear, oh, we want somebody with experience. But the first thing they say is, well, how can I get experience if nobody will hire me? That's the first thing that they say. And they have a point. They have a point. Like, how can they get experience if nobody will hire them? Because everybody who wants to hire is looking for experience. So what I want you to ask yourself, let's go back to game one. Boston was so dynamic that you couldn't tell they didn't have experience. So even though experience needed was quote unquote on the wall of the NBA finals, game one, Boston kicked a hole in the wall. So how much is your talent showing, even if you don't have experience? Can you out-talent people who have experience? So two of you all walk into an interview. One has the 5 years required, and you, on the other hand, don't. But can you kick in that door like Boston did that first series? Because I'll tell you what, everybody who picked Boston before the series, and then Boston went out and played like that, they made them feel good. They gave them what they were looking for. Everyone who picked Boston, think about it, out of the people who did pick Boston to win before the series, very few of them said they're going to win because of their experience. No, that's what people were saying about Golden State. So now go back to the series. Boston wins game one. You made them feel great if they did pick Boston. They picked them probably because all of the talent, the youth, the athleticism, the desire, the hunger, that's what it looked like to them. That's what it looked like Boston was and what Boston had, which they do have. I mean, we're talking about the NBA finals. It's utterly crazy to me how two teams make it to the finals, like the finals, the last two teams. And all of a sudden, once one team starts winning, it's like people think the other team just stinks all of a sudden. It's just utterly amazing. We're prisoners of the moment. But anyway, what does your talent look like? Can your talent outweigh the lack of experience? So basically, can you go do this job so good? So let me back up, because you haven't even gotten a chance to do the job for them yet. But where are you doing this job at? Where are you showing your talent at? So even though you walk in the door and you don't have that 5-year criteria, can they look and see your talent showing somewhere else? Because if your talent shows, it's like, now you make a decision. Okay, they got 5 years, but remember, think about what I said. They can't show their talent. They don't know how to show their 5 years of experience, what that looks like. But here you are showing your talent. And depending on who the person hiring is, they might be a thinker of foresight. So now they're looking forward, like, you know what, I'm just going to take a chance on this young person. And it's funny. That's kind of my story in the professional world. Me, after playing, I hadn't had a job. I had never had a job until I was 32 years old. So I'm going to repeat that. I never had a real job. I was a professional basketball player, but I never had a real job until I was 32 years old. And on my first interview, and just throughout the interview process, I was able to word what I could do, what I can do so well, that fortunately the people who hired me said, okay, this is not traditional. I think they hired me over 47 other candidates who have been doing that and had experience in that field. So as here I am coming for an interview, because I could articulate what I could do, I could articulate my talent. They said, hey, he hasn't been in this industry, but we'll train him how to do things in this industry, because he's bringing this level of talent here. And if we could get that together, I might have something better than all these other people, all these 47 people who've been doing this job for years. They might be. So luckily I had someone who was a forward thinker, and they kind of looked at everyone who had been doing it as stale. And that's not often you get that. But if I hadn't have walked in the door being able to talk about my talents, then I wouldn't have looked better than those people who had been doing this job. So, and you know, fortunately, I was able to walk off the professional hardwood basketball court right into a director position. And I've been in a director position ever since. I've never been anything else. And that's kind of hard to do, you know, coming off the street. And when I say the street, nobody cared that I played professional basketball. So I'm not saying I was homeless. I'm just mean the street, meaning I wasn't in the professional career world. So, you know, I really look to see how you can, if you are in that situation, how showing your talent helps you if you don't have experience. So think about, because again, think about Boston. Now, as the series goes on, what do you see? Do you see Boston not having experience helping them or hurting them? Do you see Boston making quote unquote rookie or inexperienced mistakes that Golden State's not making? I want you to look at the series and find out. You know, in some of my private programs, we actually answer these questions. But here on the podcast, I want you to just start learning to have deeper thought into these things, because once you start having deeper thought into these things, you can start applying them to yourself. If I only told you, then you're only listening to what I'm saying. But hopefully you're here at this podcast to get yourself better, not just to hear what I'm saying. So that's what I want this to be, a true place of growth. So, you know, as we talk about experience, man, I want to give you two perspectives. The perspective of if you have experience in a given field, how does that look? Like, how does that look? And is it true? Like, because you have been doing this, does it mean you're better at it? Is it helping you somehow, like Golden State? Or is it hurting you? I mean, is it hurting you? And when I say hurting you, are you comfortable? You know, oh, I've done this before, so now I'm comfortable and I'm stagnant and I'm not trying to learn new ways. I'm not trying to adapt. That's for you to figure out. On the other hand, if you don't have experience, are you talented? And when I say talented, I don't mean Michael Jordan, Jason Tatum talent. I just mean, are you talented in a given field? Can you do something? And whatever you've been doing, can you communicate what you've been doing? Because again, if you haven't done it professionally per se, and you're all of a sudden trying to do it professionally, somebody's going to ask, what's your experience? If you can't put it into words or able to show somebody that you have been doing it, even though it was over here, it wasn't, you know, it wasn't something that you could count for 5 years, but I've been doing it over here, you know, as an amateur. If you can't like make them see that, then you're going to continuously be passed up for people who have more experience, even though they might not be as good as you. Now, on the other hand, if you're someone who doesn't have experience and you're trying to switch over into something, then you can't be scared to, how can I say this? You can't be scared to do it for free, kind of, or do it under circumstances that people on TV or the internet aren't doing it. So here's an example. You might want to start being a coach per se, and no general manager or team president will hire you because you haven't coached before. Well, you better go coach at the YMCA. You know, you don't put yourself above something. If you can't coach at the YMCA, coach some other little kids. Like, start coaching in whatever environment you can coach in. Let's imagine that no, you can't coach any teams. Well, start coaching people at your job. You know, start kind of telling people how to formulate things, giving people a game plan where somebody can give you a testimonial and say, hey, he's like a coach at work. You know, I didn't know what I was doing, but he came and helped me. And it's almost like he was my coach at work. I mean, anything. Think outside the box. You got to gain experience in this, or else nobody will hire you. Yeah, you can't be mad that somebody doesn't hire you when you haven't showed them you know how to do it or you've been doing it. Like, what you mad for? So, those are some perspectives, man. So won't keep you long tonight on this episode. I really hope that the current NBA finals, man, which have been great, are helping you, and you're studying these and figuring out ways to bring that athlete back out of you. Like you might have played in high school, middle school, maybe even college for some of those who are a little more sports invested. But regardless, bring that athlete back out of you, because athletes have a certain edge about them. So bring that to the real world, that former athlete out of you, and just hope you be successful. So thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of See You at the Finish Line.